development, clarity, and what he calls intelligent action. And we talk about a pivotal moment in his life which made him realise what actually makes him happy in his life and his business. So sit back, relax, and let's focus on the fun stuff with Will Polston. Will Polston, welcome to Focus on the Fun Stuff.
Thank you. Grateful to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
I am really looking forward to today's conversation, more so I think because we've got to know each other. We've known each other for a long time, but we've got to know each other even better recently as we've worked together. I've been working with you from a coaching perspective. And just as a way of an introduction, I mean, you are Will Polston Training and Coaching. You have North Star Conversations podcast. You're the author of the North Star Thinking book. And you have a whole methodology which is so tied into, I think, helping business owners to focus on the fun stuff. And I'm looking forward to unpacking all of that. But I'm also very aware that, so this has been for the last 9 years or so, Will Polston, and there has been a few variations of what focusing on the fun stuff has been for Will, and I think it's like a really interesting journey that you've been and flipped stuff completely on its head as you've had realizations. So it would be great. I don't know where would be a great place to start. I know we just had a little mini conversation prior to the podcast that I know you as Will Polston, the coach, the high performance coach, the business strategy coach. I know you've been a trader in the city, doing all that like sexy. It sounds like a very sexy career, and I know you've had other roles prior to it that you've enjoyed as well. So if you want to like take us through that and what the big flip was from trader to coach.
Absolutely, yeah. So I suppose the good place to start is the beginning, and it gives some context, doesn't it? So I grew up with a belief that money equaled happiness, and I went off on a tangent to make as much money as early as I could. And how that came about was my dad used to get up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, get home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. He worked in London. He was head of IT for a big stock brokerage and hated his job. So he would get home, he would get up at 5 in the morning, get home at 8 o'clock at night, but he would bring that stress and that frustration home with him. And I don't know if you can relate to this or anyone listening can relate to this, where people come in and they've just got this energy that you can feel, it's a tension. And I remember that as a kid to the point where I just didn't want to be around him.
Right.
But then equally, I've got 2 uncles. One of those uncles is a billionaire. The other one's a multi-millionaire. And Dad always used to say they just got lucky. You know, that was his thing. They just got lucky. But particularly my uncle Steve, he's one of these like real high energy guys. He lights up a room when he comes in. And one day I come home from school and my dad was at home, which he was never normally at home. And he'd quit his job to set up a business with my Uncle Steve. And I remember at the time thinking, yes, this is it. Dad's going to be just like Uncle Steve. And fast forward a few months later, I'm one of 4. So I was about 10 years old at this point. I had a brother and sister who would have been about 7, and then a baby sister who would have been probably not even 1 at that point.
Right.
And after a few months of Dad waiting for this business to start and get going, I started observing he was very different. And the only way I would describe it, knowing what I know now, is he was experiencing feelings of depression.
Right.
Slept in a separate room to my mum, curtain shut all day, didn't leave the house, all the stereotypical stuff. And what I did at that time at 10 years old was I just connected the dots. Uncle Mark, billionaire, really happy. Uncle Steve, multi-millionaire, really happy. Dad, when he worked in London, stressed and frustrated, but a lot happier than he is now. I would say now, but this is like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a job and doesn't make any money. And then life changes. I knew it. My mum, who had always been a housewife up until that point, looking after all of us, was working multiple different jobs and wasn't there to pick us up from school and drop us. And so life was different. And so I just made this connection. So I started doing whatever I could to make money. I had multiple paper rounds. I would buy stuff out of the paper and sell it on eBay, and I would do whatever. And that sort of started that process, and I was making a lot of money very young. I remember we're sort of similar ages, and I remember when I was mid-teens, you were really cool if you had a pair of Nike TN trainers and like a Burberry hat and Nicholson tops and stuff. And I remember I would be going out at 12 or 13 years old where my friends whose parents had maybe given them £5 to get the bus into town and buy McDonald's. I was going in with like a couple of £100 cash and buying a new pair of trainers every week.
Wow.
And that was what started what came next. So when you're making a lot of money and you're really young, you want to spend it on stuff, or certainly I did. Yeah. And I started liking designer clothes, and I would go and buy designer clothes. And then I decided I wanted to work in a clothes shop in Chelmsford, which at the time was the only clothes shop in the world that sold Gucci, Prada, Dolce & Gabbana and Etro in the same store that wasn't in a city, because Chelmsford never used to be a city. So it was the only place in the world that sold those brands. And I got a job there when I was 15 as a Saturday boy. And then I ended up working there for 3 years and loved that, absolutely loved that job. And it's, when we talk about focusing on the fun stuff, we'll come on to that in a minute. But I really enjoyed that. And then eventually I wanted to be a multimillionaire. The guy that owned the shop was a multimillionaire. So I thought, I'm just going to open my own clothes shop. And then one day there was another shop in Chelmsford that set up, and short story is it failed and they had to shut it down. And I remember thinking, wow, if Neil can't do it, and Neil was like this industry legend as a buyer in a shop that is not too dissimilar to Flannels.
Yeah.
In fact, they bought the shop that Neil used to work for. And I thought, wow, I need to do something else. And at the time, all of the clients that that were super wealthy pretty much fit into one of four categories. They were either professional footballers, property developers, stockbrokers, or drug dealers. So I was like, I just need to become one of them four. That's what I need to do. So the first one I ruled out was being a professional footballer, because I'm terrible at football. I've played rugby my whole life. I've played ice hockey my whole life. I am terrible at football. And any of my friends that know me would agree with that. The next one I ruled out was being a property developer, because I thought you need to have loads of money to get into property. So I was left with two options: either get involved in the world of stockbroking or drug dealing. And to my mother's delight, I think, I got involved with sort of the world of finance, and did that. And I was earning a lot of money very young. And then what happened was when I started in that world, that's where I first came across personal development. And the more personal development I did, the more money I made. And that went on so I was reading books of how to sell with NLP and all of this stuff. And that's what started the journey. So the more personal development I did, the more money I made. The more personal development I did, the more money I made. Until one day, somebody said to me, we're going to go to this. The guys I work with, we're going to go to this event with this guy called Tony Robbins. You know him? I was like, do I know him? Of course I know Tony Robbins. And we went to UPW in London at the Excel, and that's where I had what I call my lightning moment.
And how long ago was this now?
11 years ago from now.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it was day 2 of that event. He was sharing the Thanksgiving story, and bam, it just hit me. I cried my eyes out for about 15 minutes, because in that moment, I realised my real driver was nothing to do with money. It was never really about money. What it was really about was my dad, and how I perceived that my dad hadn't achieved certain things he was capable of, and the impact that had on him and my mum and me and my family and a whole host of other people. And I vowed I don't want anyone else to have to go through that suffering that he went through, and sort of my perception of kind of what we went through to a degree. And from that moment on, I've just been obsessed with anything to do with human awareness, human potential, and human behaviour.
And at that point then, because you left trading ultimately, so after UPW, how did you transition?
So here's the funny story, right? So I remember coming back from UPW, and I was so fired up. If anyone's ever had that, I'm ready, I'm doing this. And if you've ever been to a Tony Robbins event, you leave like you could run through brick walls. And I remember coming home on the Sunday, and I got home and I went online straight away, and I registered a limited company. And the next day I went into the bank. In fact, the bank around the corner from where I've just come into here in London, and set up a bank account. And then I did nothing, because I said, I'll do it when I'm successful. Right. That's what I'll do. So I started and then stopped. And I did leave the city. So I was running a division of a brokerage at the time, and things were changing in the industry anyway. And I did leave, and there was an opportunity to set up a renewable energy business with an old friend of mine, and we did that, and we started the business, and it was great, and we were growing really fast. I mean, within 18 months, we had 85 staff. We were growing, and then government came in and changed legislation. It pretty much killed that business overnight.
Oh my gosh.
And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we went on holiday to Cancun, Mexico. And I'll tell the extended version, because I don't normally tell it very often. She was a dental nurse, and about 3 days before we went away, she said, you've got to come in and see the hygienist. He was her friend, and she came in. Anyway, saw the hygienist, but the hygienist clipped my gum, and it got really badly infected. And I sort of went back a few days later and she said, well, I'm really sorry. I've got to put you on these antibiotics. I know you're going on holiday tomorrow. And this holiday was quite important because we'd done like 18 months of working really, really hard. The business hadn't worked out. It was stressful, and I just wanted to have this release. And at the time, back then, I was drinking. So this is 10 or so years ago. I was drinking, 10, 11 years ago. I was drinking, and
you say that because you don't drink now at all. It's not
I don't.
Like you had a problem,
six
is
and a half years. Yeah, I should.
Well,
I mean, we can maybe touch on that in due course because it's relevant to focusing on the fun stuff in my opinion. And she said, "Look, I'm sorry you can't drink." And I remember thinking, man, we've paid extra for like the premium spirits at this all inclusive thing. I was like, oh my god, what are we going to do? Yeah. Anyway, it was fine. We went out, and one night we went to this this nightclub in Cancun called Coca Bongos, and it's mad, this place. They got midgets swinging from the ceiling. It was just absolute carnage. And my ex, she was throwing back tequila like it was nobody's business, going out of fashion. And I remember having to carry her home at 5 a.m. and she was smashed. I was sober. And she woke up the next day, she's like, Will, I can't go out in the sun. She's head down the toilet. Well, I'm going out in the sun. And I took a book with me called The Hero by Rhonda Byrne. So most people know Rhonda Byrne because she wrote a book called The Secret, which was the first personal development book I ever read. And I was reading the book, and there was a part of this book where it spoke about a guy called Mastin Kipp. Mastin Kipp had a website called The Daily Love, and he shared that he used to post a motivational quote on Twitter every day. And one day he got retweeted by Kim Kardashian, and he went from 1,000 followers to 10,000 followers overnight. No. And I just burst out crying. And again, it was like my second lightning moment. It was like the sun in that moment just beamed down on me, and I knew what I needed to do. I thought, you don't need to wait until you're successful. You could start by just posting a motivational quote on social media every day. So I came home, I posted one quote a day for a week, and then I thought, well, you idiot, some people don't go on social media in the morning. You should post one in the afternoon as well. So for the next week, I did one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The week after that, I made a really basic website of my own. A week after that, I wrote my first blog. 3 months after that, I had a 10,000 strong social media following. And the month after that, I ran my first ever event. And that was merely from like the consistency of posting quotes. Every day. Really interesting. And it was back when remember, we're talking like this would have been 2015. So 9 years ago now. September 2015. Yeah. So that started the snowball, but that's all it needed. I needed to start, and then the month after, the January, I thought I'm going to run personal development events. I'm going to run a free evening in Essex every month. I'm going to get 50 people to come along. I'm going to put together this program. So I worked with a coach called Andrew Silito, who helped me put together what was called Unlock Your Potential, which was a one-day event based on stuff that I thought would be helpful for people. And I thought, how hard will it be? You get 50 people in a room for free every week. If you've ever run events, harder than I thought. A lot harder than I thought. First event, I had 36 people turn up. 33 were friends and family. So it was pretty difficult. And then I ran that every week. First event, I had 36. Then I had 13, 12, and then 16, I think it was, and only sold 2 tickets to this event that I wanted to do. But it started the process, and I just, after that, I pivoted, if you like. I evolved it out to then what became the it was back then called the Elite Network. We then changed the name to the Evolve Network, because I thought, okay, not everybody's coming for me every week, but I know I can get probably 50 odd people in a room every month at least. And then I also thought, nobody reads just one author, so why should they just have one coach? What if I brought other speakers every month to these events? And we did that. And then eventually by the time COVID hit, we were running events in 8 cities around the UK every month. Manchester, Manchester being the first city outside of Essex that we ran them in. And that's what happened. Wow. And this thread of actually consistency and just starting, because your business now it's not like following the same thread as what you did originally of like these events in different cities. Is it like it's morphed and into? Yeah, it's evolved, and it's, I mean, as you know, I gave the name Evolve to lots of different programs. Now, when I first started, I called it the Elite Network, and I'm really quite into etymology, which is basically the root meaning of words. And the root meaning of elite means to elect. So my whole thing was you elect yourself to want to level up. So I thought, great, we'll call it the Elite Network, but most people associate elite with elitism, and a lot of people don't regard themselves as elite, so they didn't want to join. A lot of people didn't want to be branded as elite, so it didn't quite do what I wanted it to do in that respect. So then we changed it to the Evolve Network, because I believe in evolving as human beings. I'm not the same person I was even a year ago. You know, I look back on social media stuff, you know, you have on Facebook that memories.
Yeah.
I look back at some stuff, sometimes even just as recent as a year ago, and I look back and go, what was you thinking? Like, why did you post that?
Yeah.
And that for me is an indication of growth.
Absolutely. And now your business looks like masterminds, one-on-one coaching, online courses.
Yeah. So and they're all called Evolve. So we have the Evolve Academy, which is an online membership. We have the Evolve Inner Circle, which is an online coaching group. We have the Evolve Mastermind, and depending on when people are listening to this episode in 2025, we're going to be bringing out the Evolve Legacy as well.
Oh, okay, amazing. And so just on this bit of where because for me it just seems like such a massive transition from trader earning lots of money to moving towards something where I guess initially in the coaching training space, did you think, I don't know what that looks like for earnings in the future? And
yeah, good question. I suppose like a lot of people, I believe personal development in general, I don't know whether it's just because I'm in it now, but I believe it's bigger now than it's ever been. Things like podcasts, it's almost become fashionable, I suppose, to start a podcast and people to want to empower others in some way or another, you know. And I think it's great. I think it's a really, really good thing because there's so much more awareness around it. In terms of that side of things, though, it's just been a process of evolving and changing as time's gone on.
But like, did you go into it did you actually just think, I am now just focused on helping other people? Was that like the sole drive?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So the thing I talk about a lot is the ripple effect. I believe that if you achieve your full potential, whatever that looks like, you know, success is subjective. Success for every single person is different. But if you achieve your full potential, not only does it benefit you, but it benefits your family, your friends, your community, society, humanity, the universe. And that's what I really believe in, is that if you have a mission in life, I call it a North Star, that is the equivalent of trying to empty the sea of a spoon. It's something you'll pursue your whole life and you'll get constant fulfillment from it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that everything's going to go perfectly. In fact, optimal growth comes at the border of support and challenge. So if it's too easy, it becomes boring and you're not really growing. If it's too hard, you break down. So we constantly need to be balancing that act to get the optimal growth. So that's what we kind of help people do in the various different forms.
And just prior to just starting the podcast, you just made a comment where you said, actually, in any job that you've had, you've always it's always been fun. You've always enjoyed it, which I think is I'm completely assuming him, but I would think that's quite unusual amongst most people, that they've not done something where they didn't enjoy it. And so have you made sure that you focused on the fun stuff in your previous roles? Because I know now, like knowing you have a lot going on, like you're constantly learning, you're going to events, you've got one-on-one clients, you've got masterminds, you've got a dinner that you run. I could imagine you have a lot of people reaching out to you a lot. I can't imagine an easy thing to switch off. And like, how do you maintain the focusing on the fun stuff in what feels like a busy business?
Yeah. Well, the reason I mentioned it before, I think it was apt for this podcast. It's not something I would normally talk about, but if I think all the way back to even when I worked when I did my first paper round, right? So I don't know, 12. I didn't have a paper round that I did every morning. I had a paper round that you did on a Thursday, and it was about 300 papers that I would go and deliver. But you got paid essentially double for putting leaflets in the paper first. So they would give you like four different leaflets that you put in the paper, and then you went and delivered the papers with the leaflets in them. And I just remember gamifying it. I remember how quickly can I do this? So I'd have the leaflets and I'd boom, 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 in the next one, bang, next one. So I made it fun. I made it a game like that. Then which is a little bit naughty now, I suppose, is that a friend of mine owned a bar. Well, his parents owned a bar. And he was a couple of years older than me. And one day they got let down on pot boys at this bar. And it was the town where I lived. And he said, we're short on pot boys. Would you be able to come and do it tonight? So I don't even know how my parents let me get away with it, but they said, yeah. I was 14 at the time, starting work at 9:30 on a Friday night, working till 1 a.m. finished at 1. Then we had to clean up a bit, and then I was getting home at like 2. And I went and did that. But the first night they said, well, we've never had a pot boy as good as you, because in my mind, I'm going to be the best pot boy that ever existed. There would never be out of stock of drinks. I would get the drinks. I would be whizzing round, and whereas most people that were 16 years old working in there, they just wanted to stand around, hide, go and chat to girls or whatever they could get away with doing. But I just devoted myself to trying to be the best at doing that role, and then I ended up working there for a couple of years, which was great, because every Friday and Saturday night I would be being. Even back then it was quite a lot of money for a young guy, for a young person, full stop, to be earning at that age. I think at that time, I was 14 years old, working on a Friday and Saturday night. I'd say most weeks I'd be 300 quid cash, which back, this is 25 years ago.
There's a lot, yeah. Massively so.
20 years ago.
Yeah, so ultimately, because pot boy is not the most exciting job in the world, but are you saying, like, from this, and I'm taking that you are always, because the expression escapes me, but like the Tony Robbins thing of like what your mind perceives, you believe or achieve, and for me, you are shaping the situation to be, okay, well, this is what it is, but this is how I'm going to make it great, which I believe you can do in almost exactly any situation. Like the Viktor Frankl book, like the situation that you're in, you're still in charge of how you approach it and see it.
Yeah, exactly. And then if I fast forward, so when I was working in the clothes shop, what was I doing all day? I was talking to people. I was talking to people. I was making people feel good. I was trying to think ahead of them. So my boss was an amazing guy. One of my first mentors, Paul DeFawn, and he was so good. He would look at people and go, okay, so you like those shoes. Okay, so you're a size 7.5 and you're a size 32 waist and you're a size 15.5 inch neck. And they go, how do you even know that? But we just learnt it. And even now I can still do it, and I can tell the sizes that people are in their clothes. So we did that, and I started thinking forward. So he would be chatting to someone about the shoes, and I just knew that Paul was they'd want to try them. So I would go upstairs, get the shoes in the size that they were, and come back down and get them by the time that they said they wanted them. And I was trying to think ahead all the time. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the people I was around. I was working, so that was a theme for me. When I was working in the bars, I enjoyed the people I was around. When I worked in the clothes shop, I enjoyed the people around, and I was talking all day long. When I worked in the city, and just for clarification, I know it's just semantics, I wasn't a trader, I was a broker, slightly different, but I enjoyed the people I was around, and I enjoyed talking to people all day. All day long I'd be talking to people, I'd be on the phones all day long. Now I talk to people for a living. So and I was strategic in how I spoke to them. Yeah. When I had the renewable energy business, we had a call center with 50 people, and I would do the training every week for all the new starters. I would pretty much every morning do the kickoff meeting and getting people energized and rolled up, and that was a piece that I really, really loved, and that theme carried on, and that's the common theme that's come between it, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so now with Will Polston training and coaching, I know you must have hundreds of clients in one group or training or online course or another. And I can see that you have got a skill set, and that's all come from learning and personal development of how to enjoy what you're doing, the business, how to be joyful in the day, no matter what it is what you're doing. So you speak to hundreds of business owners, I suspect, all the time. Are there, like, in terms of focusing on the fun stuff in the business, I mean, I started this podcast from personal experience, but I do also believe because of the clients I talk to that they're trying to get out of their own way, that actually, I need to do some kind of survey on this, but most business owners, that like they'll be in a period of their business where they're just in the weeds, they're not enjoying it, they're stuck, all the things that you think it's going to be great, I've started my own business, don't materialize, like more time, more money, they do at some point, but you get into this period where it's not. And so is there some like commonalities, things that you see repeated over and over of why business owners get stuck and go, well, I'm just not enjoying this anymore, I don't know if I should be carrying on with it, what I should be doing?
Absolutely, there really is. And when I speak publicly, I go through a process, and one of the things that I say, the third of the 3 rules I talk about is we're going to have fun. and then I put dots in between the F, the U, and the N, because fun for me is an acronym for fully utilize now. And I think that's the thing that the majority of business owners don't do, is they don't fully utilize now. So what I mean by that is, if you don't fill your day with high value activities, your day gets filled with low value distractions.
Right.
And most business owners are not being really strategic about how they're using their time now. Because at the end of the day, there's always two businesses that we're running. There's the business that we are today, and there's the business that we're going to be tomorrow. If we only ever focus on today, we don't get to be the future business. And if we only ever focus on the future, we never get there because we haven't focused on today. So there's a balance. You're constantly switching between the two. And I believe that people wanting to achieve success, quote unquote, whatever that looks like to them, however that is, really comes down to three core components. So having absolute clarity of where they are now, clarity of where they want to get to, and making sure it's aligned with their values. Intelligent action is exactly that, taking the action that's aligned with their values, where they want to go, what they want to do, so that they are actually making progress in whichever way that looks like. And then having what I call active accountability. So there's something called Pearson's Law, and Pearson's Law states that what gets reported improves, but what gets measured improves, but what gets measured and reported back improves dramatically. So that's where accountability comes in. If you've got accountability, whether it's a coach, a mentor, accountability partner, whatever it is, and you're saying, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to report it back. As you know, I go through with my clients each week, where are we up to, what's the progress? We update what we call North Star trajectories, which are essentially a roadmap of goals, and we see the progress. And it's done for two reasons. One, so that people can see what they need to be doing, and secondly, to acknowledge the progress they've made. So in answer to your question, what is it that people don't do? It's that I don't think that they get clear enough about what it is they actually want to achieve in the future. And then from that, they're not able to prioritize, because, like I said before, if you don't fill your day with high priority activities, your day gets filled with low value distractions. And also, if you don't know where you're going, distractions will look like opportunities. You think, oh, this is a really good idea, but actually you've just completely veered off course. So when we have both of those things in place, and we put a structure in place, we can see the incremental improvements that compound over time, and it makes a huge difference.
Because in those periods of times where business owners are just, why am I doing this? What is happening? I've also been there. I suspect a lot of the time they have just forgotten where they were going, why they started. Like when you start a business, you're like, this is what I'm going to do, and it's all exciting and energy. And then as all of these things unexpected happen that you have to solve, deal with, learn, understand how to do, I guess the end result can get misty on what that is. But also I just want to dive in, and I know you did say it a little bit earlier, but just to like really recap on it, because with the North Star thinking, yours is not just about, you know, how much do you want to earn at the end of this year, or I want my business to be turning $1 million. Like those are all milestones and totally valid, aren't they? But your coaching also is based around having something much bigger that's potentially unreachable. But is that like, how would you describe the North Star?
So the way I describe it to people is, having a North Star is like having a mission in life that's the equivalent of trying to empty the sea with a spoon. It's something that you are working towards continuously, but you're never going to achieve it. And the story goes, and I'm not religious, but there's a story that most people have heard of, which involves a baby born in December a couple of thousand years ago, right? And there were 3 men, supposedly wise, all carrying presents, and they followed this North Star, and they achieved their goal of finding this baby and gave him the presents. But in every version of the story that I've ever heard, they never actually went to the North Star. They just used it as their guiding light. And that's how I see it. What's the guiding light that you're just going to continue to work towards? Yes, you have goals along the way. I've got goals. There's lots of goals that I want to achieve, and I make sure they're aligned with this mission. So my North Star is about empowering people to transform excuses into results and live a life they love. So I look at everything that I'm trying to do, and I go, can I align it with what I'm looking to do, and how does that fold into the mix? So one of my personal long-term goals is I grew up playing ice hockey, and like a lot of kids, when they're growing up, I wanted to be a professional ice hockey player. some of my friends went on to become professional ice hockey players, but the ones that went on to do really, really well were the ones whose parents were in a position to send them off to lots of different camps all over the world and get better and improve. And I didn't have that as much of a luxury. So what I want to do is acquire my local ice hockey team. I want to build a 6,000 seater ice arena. I want to reinvest all the profits back into the junior academy, and here in the UK we have something called the Elite League, and I've got a 15-year vision of winning the Elite League playoffs with more homegrown players than any other club in history. And I want to do that because that for me is a form of being able to do something that has an impact, and it enables those kids that have the dream now to be able to actually pursue it because we've created a way to enable that to happen. That's just one example. Whereas if you said to most people, well, Will, you're 1 minute you're coaching people, and then you've got a mushroom business, and then you want to run an ice hockey team, where do they all come into play? But the golden thread between all of it is exactly that.
So the goal, like the ice hockey goal of buying the local team, because I was about to reference Gary Vee and the New York Knicks, but I was going to ask you, that particular goal of yours, is that something you then share with your team in the Will Polston business? And because you need to consolidate, like you need to really mobilize the team around you. You're all kind of working for the same mission. For people who run a business, they're thinking, okay, actually I want to do that. I want to figure out what my North Star is. That one example there, is that, would you share more of, I want to help people turn excuses into results? Do you also share the ice hockey dream with your team and the people that are working with you? Like, how do you use them?
I do, and there's a really important reason for this. Every single person has their own drivers. Nobody, I mean, you've got 30, 40 staff.
Yeah.
Not a single one of your staff, not a single one of them come to work for you. You might think they come to work for you, but not a single one does. They come to work for them. And the sooner you can understand why they're working, what their goals are. So one of my first interview questions with people is, tell me about your 5-year goals. And I want to know their 5-year goals, because if I can get an understanding of where they're going in 5 years, I know where I'm going. We've just created, in fact, I was literally reading it on the way up here on the train. We've created a resource. It's a document that is showcasing where we're going over even just the next 3 years. And if I know really clear where I'm going, and I know where my team want to be personally, professionally, financially, then I can align where we're going with where they want to go, and we get on the same direction. So the example I use a lot, so my assistant Mia, and when I was interviewing 4 or 5 years ago for a new EA, Mia wasn't my first choice. I think she was second or third choice actually, after the first interview. And I think it was the third interview, I remember asking the woman who was the front runner at the time, tell me about what life looks like for you in 5 years' time. And for me, it was what I call a backdoor question, because it gets you to understand where they're really going and what they really want to do. And she was about, 50 at the time. She said, well, we're going to have sold our house, downsized to a place called Holland-on-Sea, which is a place in Essex where basically people go to die. It's like lots of bungalows, lots of old people, they wind down and take it easy. And she said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go down there. And I remember thinking, these next 5 years for me, we're ramping up.
Yeah.
And I can tell by you're ramping down. And then I asked Mia the same question, and she said, well, the kids have just flown the nest. They've both gone off to university. I've got about, I think in her words, she said, I've got about 15 years worth of good work left in me, and I want to do something that makes a difference. She had worked for a company where I think she was, I always get confused. She was either employee number 3 or employee number 13. By the time she left, they had over 2,000 employees, and she helped them grow the business. They sold the business, made an absolute fortune as the guys that started in the business, and she was part of that journey. But I think she would agree with me saying that she didn't have that fulfillment, that fun, knowing she's got that meaning, doing something that's really meaningful. Yeah. So for me, that was it. I was like, straight away, I knew, well, that's the person for me, because we're going to be able to grow together and do something that makes a difference, I'm pleased to say we do. Yeah.
What a great question to use in interviews. So, the team that you... Okay, well, this question then might not make sense, but the team that you have, do you actively help them as like in your leadership to understand what the next 5 years looks like for them? Or do you know, or if say somebody joins who's not quite clear on it, or is that, do you like do that as part of your coaching, mentoring to the team? Because I actually think that is something I want to get a lot better at with my leadership team, helping them understand what the next 3, 4, 5 years looks like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. I want to know what it looks like. I want to understand what it looks like. I want to know. And it's something that's often when I get clients to sometimes ask it, and I appreciate that for some people that they might feel that it's uncomfortable to ask their staff, well, what do you want? But I feel that they want stuff regardless. You might as well know and then use your business as the vehicle to help them achieve what they want. That's kind of how I see it, which creates a win-win. And an example today, so one of the guys that works for me, he's worked for me for about a year. He said one of the things that he really wanted to do was to be able to showcase his skills and help people. So we this year introduced what we call weekly clinics. So we do a weekly clinic for our clients on creating their North Star trajectory, which is goal setting. We do a weekly clinic on time mastery, do a weekly clinic on involving your thinking, like mindset stuff, and a weekly clinic on active accountability. And when I was away just this last couple of days, I had the idea of, well, why don't we start introducing a marketing clinic? And then I could potentially bring in guest speakers that come and deliver on it. But then it also enables Tommy, who's on my team, to be able to start doing the thing that he wants to do, which is helping other people with me. Because otherwise, if I don't do that and that's what he wants to do, then he's either going to go and set up for himself, or he's going to go to another company that can do that. So part of it for me is around staff retention as well. If I can provide them everything that they want, and my goals can meet their personal wants and needs, they're not going to have any other reason to go anywhere else. And that's something that we do, which so far seems to be working. The other thing as well, which just as a practical tip for everyone that's listening, is that I used to do this quarterly. I definitely don't do it quarterly anymore. I probably do it once. I'd say probably once every 9 months. So sometimes we get up to a couple of times a year. Is that I will get my team to list every task that they do.
Right.
And then I get them to colour code it. Green if they love it, amber if they don't mind it, red if they dislike doing it. And what that enables me to do is that when I get all of the team giving me these breakdowns of what they're doing, it enables me to then rearrange stuff. So I will have certain team members that don't like doing something that somebody else actually think they would quite like to do. Well, then they take on those tasks, and I'm trying to get people to do as much as they possibly can that's in the green, the stuff they love doing. Because I think that most people, if you said what's the colour of danger, most people would say red. I disagree. I think the real colour of danger is actually orange, because in life, if you're doing lots of orange tasks, the sound of orange for me is meh. It's a bit meh. Yeah. And if you're just doing stuff that's meh all day long, then you'll do it to a point and then go, I've had enough of this. So we work really hard to try and make sure they're doing more of the stuff that they absolutely love doing and less of the stuff they don't, because if they're doing the stuff they love doing, they're going to do it faster, they're going to do it better, they're going to learn about it, which only helps me. If they're doing it and it's providing value, it means that then I can give them pay rises, I can do those things. So that's something that we work on as well. It's not just about me focusing on the fun stuff. Yeah. It's how can we get the team focusing on the fun stuff.
I love that. We've got a lot going on at the moment, so I'm going to do it right now. But that is one thing I'm going to add to this. I have had team members leave, like higher level team members, in the past year or so. And when it's actually come down to why they have resigned or found a new job in exit interviews, it's been like, I really hated this part of the role and I was doing it every single day. I knew there was no let up, which actually was not true. We just never had a conversation about it because they just kept, and they thought, well, this is it. This is how it's going to be. Where actually that exercise would be, because sometimes you just don't know, do you? If you don't have the conversation, you don't know what you don't know. And it'd be like, I didn't realise you didn't enjoy that part of it.
Happiness is equal to or greater than expectations, and most expectations aren't communicated. And the way I see it is that it's our responsibility as business owners to have the conversation and find out what is it that's going on. One of the things that I do in my, in my mastermind groups, we start the session, every session on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at today? And I do that because I want to have an understanding. If someone, when you're a business owner, we have a lot going on, right? And it can be super stressful. I've just had a whole bunch, like this year's been tough for a couple of different reasons, and I have days when I'm not feeling 100%. I'm not waking up every single day doing backflips out of bed, and sometimes with clients, they could have lost their biggest client, they could have had someone decide to sue them, they could have a personal situation going on at home. So we asked them that at the beginning of our mastermind groups, because I want to understand where people are at, find out the reason why, so we can hopefully get them to leave on a different level. We can change that. Equally, for the other people in the room, if someone's a 4 for whatever reason, they can understand they're a 4 and know that, rather than be thinking, oh, so-and-so's off with me today. They're not quite. So each week when we have our management meeting, I go around on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel about your role right now? And I get, most weeks we're between 8 and 10, which is great. But then sometimes I'm a 4 because of maybe something going on personal. I'm a 4 because this has happened or whatever. And I want to know, so that then I can do what I can to try and shape that and change that. And I think that's been one of the best things that we've done on a weekly basis. And I think that might actually be one of the reasons why we don't go into doing the traffic light, that's what I call it, traffic light in the tasks, green, amber, red, as much, because I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on more often.
Yeah. I need to make notes after this, because literally on a Monday we have our weekly management meeting, and I really like being in tune with my team, but I like to know that they're happy. And when sometimes you'll sit around a table with somebody and they're a bit like, and I'm kind of sensing that something's a bit off, but there isn't a natural conversation around, you're right, what's going on? And that is just such, because I've experienced it in the mastermind. Emma, how are you feeling out of 1 to 10? But actually, doing it with your team would just be, it's such a great, like, non-confrontational way, isn't it, as well, just to go, oh, do you know what, today actually I had a big weekend, it's a 5, or just spoke to that client, I'm a 4. Like, it's just a really easy way to deliver it, isn't it?
Exactly that. And I think the other part as well is it gives me the opportunity to be real. I can say, I'm a 4 because I've just stepped off a flight or whatever it might be, and I get to be real and honest, and that definitely I find is helpful. For sure. I'm
definitely going to start our meetings with that. That is a brilliant idea. One thing I think you do really well, and you might think differently, but so you've grown Will Polston training and coaching to a big level. There's lots of people in the community, but on top of that, you also have other businesses of things that either you're interested in or opportunities, or they're complementary to what you do. So like one of them is 22. It's a lion's mane supplement, which I know is growing into a big business, isn't it? And you've had that for like a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. I know you've got other joint ventures and other businesses with clients. And so my podcast was started originally from thinking about, which was actually a conversation we had, 26-year-old Emma sat at home or in the serviced office I had in Regis at the time, like thinking, oh my God, what am I doing next? Like, how am I going to get this from here to there, or just all this stuff? And then I look at you and think you've got your core business, and you've also got other businesses as well. And the question is, I want to delve into a little bit of how you are clearly very busy, because also on top of this, I know you're still doing tons of personal development. I know you've just literally got off the plane yesterday, because you remember like Joe Polish's Genius Network, and you're doing all of that, plus running your team, plus coming up with new strategies, ideas in the business. So you're massively into the marketing in Will Polston business, plus you've got other interests and growing businesses which are successful. Like, are there some like key principles you apply to be able to go, I'm going to create this lion's mane business, but it's not going to take all my time? Because potentially then I think where I'm going, like a lot of business owners will initially go to, I am doing stuff, I am like going to figure out the marketing, and I am doing, like they get right into it. Whereas I assume you are starting businesses not with this approach. How are you able to do it all? Yeah,
it's a really good question. I think I love working with my clients, and I'm so fortunate. I love variety. So for me, in any given day, I mean, I could be talking to I mean, some days if I've got a group call as well, 25 different business owners in a day really easily. And what happens as well is I really get under the bonnet. So I can see the patterns of what's going on, what's happening all the time. And I work at a strategic level with them. You know, I'm not really getting into the weeds with what's going on more often than not. I'm looking at what are the roadblocks, what are the issues, what do we need to be working on, and then it kind of removing the hurdles. So what that's done, I mean, to date, I've done about 7,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. So I've seen a lot of problems that come up. I've seen a lot of things that happen, and that enables me to develop and grow and learn. So in answer to your question, when I'm working with various different businesses, I just see my other businesses as another client. And with most clients, even my one-on-one clients, I'll typically have an hour with them every 2 weeks. And I believe, I'm biased, other people might think differently, I believe that 1 hour a week is enough to make some difference, you know, and you compound that over 6 months or 12 months, then you really start seeing the compound effect. So I look at working with clients in that way, with my own business in that way. If I can spend an hour or 2 hours a week on that business and have the team in place to keep it going, then that's correct. So the mushroom business, I don't spend any longer than not even 2 hours a week on.
And okay, amazing, because that is all from the initial approach, isn't it? 'Cause I'm just thinking, if I think it back to myself, when we started our follow-up service around about 18 months ago now, it's all about how you approach the opportunities. Because I had the idea, and then I immediately got stuck into, right, how are we going to do this? What we're going to do? Like, I didn't divvy up tasks and projects, and it comes from a mindset perspective as well, doesn't it? To go, well, hang on a minute, I'm not the one doing all of this. And that's totally what I did 18 months ago. I was like, right, we're going to do this. I'm going to get a priority list together. We're going to get some test clients, some testimonials. And I hadn't divvied, or I hadn't given up responsibilities. I just went, right, Emma's going to figure this out first, and then she'll get the structure in place afterwards, which is much, much harder to do because it's all just the Emma way and in your head. Whereas for me, you are approaching this exactly how you should do. Just that this is a business. It's not me. It's not my baby. I'm going to get the right team in place to deliver it.
I have a T-shirt that hangs in my office. I don't know if I've ever shown you this T-shirt or not,
so.
but I have a T-shirt that hangs in my office that a client of mine printed for me because they used to hear me say it so often, particularly on my inner circle calls. A week wouldn't go by without me saying it. So she printed a T-shirt for me. It says, "It needs to be done, but I don't need to do it." And that's kind of a mantra that I live by. It needs to be done, but I don't need to do it. So yeah, look, I'm not perfect. There's times when I get frustrated as well. I think the other thing is 70, 20, 10. 70% of my time is still spent on what I call the coaching business. So I'm very aware that I've got limited capacity to spend on other stuff that I want to get involved with. So I have no other choice. There is literally no other choice for me to, if I want to do it, to not just give it to somebody else and get it done. Otherwise, I know it's not going to be done. And I'm still learning lessons. I'm still understanding stuff. And one of my biggest mistakes is that I actually don't sometimes delegate soon enough.
Right.
I should just have the idea and hand it straight over. Whereas sometimes I think, no, I need to formalize it a little bit and break it down a little bit and then hand it over. And and that doesn't happen. And again, just something practical for people listening. I follow a process called a must-do list, and this is one of the components of what I call Master Your Time, which is a process that we use. And a must-do list is essentially a to-do list that has subsections on it. So it has future tasks, it has week ahead tasks, and it has today's top priorities. So rather than having one long list, because when you have one long list, the first thing you want to do is do the quick things and the easy things to make the list shorter. Whereas if you have future tasks, you can park anything for future tasks and you go, right, well, I'm just going to do that at some point in the future. Then I personally do it on a Monday morning. I'll take the things from future tasks and I'll put them on the week ahead tasks. And then every day I'll take things from the week ahead tasks and I'll move them on to today's top priorities. So if there's things that sit on my future tasks for too long, or there's things that sit on my week ahead tasks that I'm not getting around to, I'm not prioritizing them enough, which means I need to just get rid of them entirely, or I just need to say, no, I need to hand this over to somebody else. So that's another way of being able to work more efficiently.
Love that. And one of the biggest breakthroughs I had recently was the accountability chart that you shared with me. Because, I mean, my business is not big and it's not small. It's like in this kind of middle part. And I think it happens to a lot of business owners where you because you started from the beginning and you relinquish stuff bit by bit. But it was a real, like, mirror back to me when we actually just went through still parts of the business that I have responsibility for. And even though I was doing them, it wasn't like, I'm still doing all these different roles. I was just doing them. And I just clearly that approach of, like, with your other businesses, you're very clear on what part. So you're going to be looking after the strategy, and then all the other spaces in the accountability chart need to be filled. Because I think a lot of business owners, they'll just pick up all the other bits that somebody hasn't got responsibility for, and it just becomes overwhelming, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A lot of the clients that I work with, they get to a point where they hit what I call the glass ceiling. And the glass ceiling is essentially what they've done that worked doesn't work anymore. So they worked hard, they were doing everything themselves, and it got them to a point of success. And this is the part that most people struggle with, is they get to a stage and they go, but it worked up until recently, but there's just not enough hours in the day. They're working more hours than they want to be, and they hit this glass ceiling. And I don't know, I didn't ask this before we went live, but do you remember our conversation about self-sabotage?
Yes.
Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely.
So what happens as well is a lot of people, they'll hit this glass ceiling and they either can't break through it or they keep trying to break through it, and then stuff happens. So we had a conversation and you were saying, I just keep self-sabotaging. There was a certain ceiling that you couldn't get through. And I don't believe in self-sabotage. I don't think self-sabotage exists. I believe in self-love and self-care. And unconsciously, so consciously we go, well, I really want to do this. But then unconsciously we don't. But there's a reason. So we need to find, well, what's the reason that it's not happening? And I believe it's because people are always protecting themselves. So when we go, well, what did Emma really want to do? And we were saying, well, what you wanted was freedom, was one of the things that we spoke about. And what we realized is that every time you grew to a certain level, what got compromised was your freedom, the thing you wanted most. So you're thinking, well, I'm self-sabotaging, but actually you're not. You're self-protecting the thing you wanted most, which was freedom, right? Yeah. So we were able to understand that. And then we said, well, what would have to happen for it to be different? So coming back to your question from sort of 20 minutes ago about what are some of the patterns with business, that's one of them, is that what got them to where they are won't get them to where they want to go. So we have to shift gears, we have to change. And shifting gears doesn't always mean working more, working longer, working harder. It's changing the structure in the way that things are done. Coming back to your accountability chart, and it's quite eye-opening for most people. When we write down the roles in a business of what are all the different roles of what exists, and then we put the name of the person who owns the role. Yeah. It's eye-opening for so many people, because there was Emma on that more times than you would have liked to have seen it, right? Yeah. So it's a case of, right, so then we have to start making a transition. What are the key things that we need to start moving from? And I'm a simple guy. I love simplicity. So I use a traffic light system for a lot of things. Red, amber, green. So the first thing we look at is, what's the stuff that you really dislike doing, owning X role? And that's one of the roles that I know, well, when we spoke last, you were hiring for, whether you hired the person or not. Yeah, I don't know. But that particular role, and that's what enables people to start stepping out, because they've replaced those people. Yeah, totally. And that particular, just on that accountability chart, it's also not just about sales, marketing, finance. Like, I think most business owners really underestimate, like on that chart was who's looking after the suppliers to the business, who's looking after IT, who's looking after any legal things that might arise. And you realise that even, okay, my business, would I employ somebody to look after legal? No, I definitely wouldn't. But you understand then that all these things that might pop up, they come in your way. Absolutely, they do. And it's things that people, and it's the ones that don't come up that often, which are the things that could potentially slip through the net, like renewing the lease on the building, like making sure that the VAT is correct, and certain things that are VAT deductible have all been included, things like that. And it's who's ultimately responsible for it. And it's something that most people don't do, and it becomes really open. And the other thing is, well, one of the reasons why a few years back I just decided, you know what, every day now I'm just going to wear a black t-shirt or a white t-shirt, was because of decision fatigue. There are so many decisions that we have to make in any given day. For me, I've got lots of clients I'm working with, lots going on. I want to streamline my decisions down to, because the most basic things they all add up.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah,
Decision
yeah,
fatigue?
decision fatigue. You have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of tiny micro decisions you're making. One of the reasons why I eat pretty much the same food every day. When I go to Marks and Spencer's, I'm getting the same food because I just don't want to think about it. When I open a menu, I almost always pick the same food because I don't want to think about it, because I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that I need to do each day, which for some people listening to this, they think, really, is it that bad? But when you've got a lot on, yes, it is. And it all adds up. And the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back, you know, that can be the case sometimes. Yeah. It really is. So the having all of those small, like I say, even things like having to remember in the back of your mind, oh, on this date each year we need to renew the office lease, or on this date this year we need to do this. So one of my little top tips, again, I always try to make stuff practical for people. Yeah. But one of my things, most people these days will have a smartphone. And I don't know what it is if you use Samsung. I've never used a Samsung, but on your iPhone, you have an assistant called Siri. And if you've got an iPhone, and anyone else in the room that's got an iPhone right now, it's about to go, so you go and say, hey Siri, remind me to do X, Y, Z. So I'll be thinking of something that will pop into my mind, and I'll say, hey Siri, remind me at 9 o'clock to message so-and-so. Because it's popped into my head. I want to get it out of my head as quickly as I can, so that I don't have to think about it. Because the way I think of your mind is like a computer. When you're using your computer, you have a certain amount of memory on that computer, RAM as we would call it, and that's your bandwidth. So if you have loads of apps open and loads of tabs open, eventually, if you keep adding tabs, it's going to crash. Yeah. So what I'm constantly trying to do is, how can I close down as many tabs as possible, so that the applications that I've got running in my mind are working to the best of their ability. So remembering that little thing of, oh, I must speak to someone, I must drop Emma a message, I must, whatever it might be, I remind so this morning, I thought to myself, I'm coming on the podcast, we're probably going to talk about the book. So I said, hey Siri, remind me to grab a copy of my book at 8 a.m. So then I knew that I would have a copy of it. Yeah. Otherwise I would have got on the train and gone, I forgot. And it allows me to stay focused on what's in front of me.
Yeah, and to be super stupid technical here. So when you say, please remind me, what does it do? Flash up on the phone?
It will set a reminder. So remind me at 8 o'clock to bring a copy of the book, and it will literally say, grab a copy of the book at 8 a.m. and then a reminder will pop up. When and the other one in the car, I get a lot of, I'm in the car, I'm driving. Obviously, you don't want to be using your phone as you're driving. I've learned that lesson the hard way. Yeah. And I'll be thinking something will pop into my head. I've got to call someone, or I need to think of something or an idea, and I'll use that in the car as well.
Oh, I love that idea, because I often voice note Bex, my PA, but in the evening I think, well, I won't voice note, or then I end up sending myself an email which she picks up, and then she's creating me a task, and this is actually just a great way for the little stuff to
exactly, and it's as minor as it is, it's friction. Even if you think to send someone a WhatsApp, even a voice note, you unlock your phone, you click the WhatsApp app, you scroll down or type the person, find Bex, get Bex, hold the thing, do the voice note. Yeah. I don't know about you, the amount of times I'm halfway through the voice note, someone calls me, I'm like, oh, why?
You have to do it again.
Then I do it again. Whereas I can say, hey, and I'll do it at times when I know that it's going to be easy for me to look at my phone. Mm-hmm. So there might be things I think of for a Monday morning meeting that, rather than, because I used to always transfer them onto my must-do list, but again, it was the same thing. Click on Google Drive, open the Google Doc, type it out, whereas now I can just stack them up and I can do it all at one time. So it just helps focus.
Yeah.
Time. And I believe that focusing on the fun stuff is comes back to that acronym, fully utilise now. How can I really use now to the best of my ability? And there's not a person that I've met when I'm working with clients. So we look at all 7 areas of life. So yes, we're going to look at business. Yes, we're going to look at finances. But one of the areas we look at is mindset. And when I say to most people, how do you want to feel? How do you want to think? They'll say, I want to be positive. I want to be energized. I want to be focused. But one of the things that most entrepreneurs and business owners will say is that I just want to be more present. They've got so much going on in their mind all the time, whether it's thinking about the VAT that's due in a week, whether it's the staff member that they want to hire, whether it's the person that's giving them ag, whether it's the supplier that's putting a massive order they can't handle, whether it's worrying about the budget that's just come out and the impact on that. There's so many things that they're thinking about in any given time, that the more that we can do to get them to be present by creating space and time in their mind, the better. And that's just one of the tools that just enables us to be be in the moment rather than drifting off.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to use it myself. There's one thing I really want to ask you about before we end this interview, and we just mentioned it a little bit earlier and touched on it, and it's pertinent to me because it's definitely an ongoing conversation in my mind. Will I stop? Will I carry on? Alcohol. So you did mention, so your story earlier was like, well, I used to drink back then. I know you don't drink now. And I know that you are very, not just like focused on your health and that you take supplements and things, but I know you're actively learning about it. Like you're very interested in understanding how the body works, how to optimize. I know, nearly just remembered, you've got a personal goal that you think you'll be living to 150, was it? So you did make a comment before of like it does tie into focusing on the fun stuff because there's clearly a reason you stopped. And I think a lot of people in today's day and age, me being one of them, I will associate it with like exciting times and celebrating things. I'll also associate it with a way to self-medicate a shitty day, for want of a better word, and go, oh, just have a glass of wine. And then it like you feel a bit relieved. And for me, it's an ongoing thing where I think, I'm sure one day I'll just stop. And I go, oh, no, I won't. And it's a stupid amount of time it takes up in my head thinking about, would life be so much better if I just didn't drink? And there's so many people I follow now online who don't drink. And I'm really intrigued as to the benefits it's had. At the dinner, your monthly dinner that I attend, the networking event, it's one of the events where I'll say to Joe at home, like, I've never been to an event where everybody is so... that they don't drink for not that people have problems or it's a boring place. It's not about that. It's just that they're actually like, life is better. I'm enjoying it more. I'm more productive. I'm having a better time without it. And so I'm just really intrigued because I do feel like there'll be people listening to this that go, oh, I shouldn't have had that. Like, I know that I'm doing something that's not good for me and it doesn't make me feel good and I get a headache and I'm groggy and why did you stop and what has it meant?
Okay, so I have played rugby my whole life. Right, and I make that relevant because most people know that rugby is a big drinking culture. Lads, smashing the beers after the thing. And I played ice hockey, and ice hockey is very much the same. Literally, at the end of the game, man of the match beers. Before you've even taken your kit off, you're smashing a bottle of Bud or whatever it is. And I was the guy for a very, very long time that would be the guy that wanted to go out and get smashed, basically.
Really?
You know, I was sort of the guy that was the instant, come on, all the I think the most, I remember it was actually my cousin's wedding, you know, this is, I don't know, 10 years ago. Last orders at 1:45, I decided the bar's probably 3 meters long. I said, like, how many Jaegers do you think you could get on this bar?
Oh my God.
I don't know. I think we ended up getting, I want to say 78 Jaeger bombs, and we did a Jaeger train at knocking those, and so it's just stuff. And I would get absolutely smashed, and I would act a prat and do stupid stuff. And it was like Groundhog Week. When I worked in the city, we'd go out on a Thursday night. Thursday night was a big thing. You'd go out, we'd get absolutely smashed. I'd get home at 2-3 a.m, get up at 5, go to work. We'd finish at midday on a Friday, go down the pub, do it all again, wake up Saturday, play ice hockey, play Sunday, get smashed again on Sunday. So it was very much binge drinking, right? I was never really one to sit at home on a Tuesday evening and just have a beer. It was binge drinking. And then as I got a little bit older, more when I started in the coaching business, so I was still drinking a bit. Gradually I was drinking less and less, but what would happen for me is I was all or nothing. So then I would go out, whether it's a Thursday or Friday night, feel terrible the next day. I'll be feeling 60% on a Monday, 70% on a Tuesday, 80% on a Wednesday, just about get to 100% by Thursday or Friday and do it all over again. And I was realising how unproductive I was becoming, and I had a few nights out where I'd really acted a prat. And I think the other thing is as well is the root origin of the word alcohol means spirit killer. And
no way.
Yeah, and I was my spirit was being, and we all think we get more confident when we've drunk alcohol, and it may seem that way initially, but I think we're really suppressing stuff at any level when someone's doing something to an extreme. Joe Polish, a mentor of mine, he says, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. Now, I would have never said I was addicted to drink, and don't think I'd say I'm addicted now, but the reason that I would drink to such an extreme was it was a form of self-medicating for other stuff that was going on. Anyway, it was my 29th birthday. I had a particular goal I wanted to achieve by the time I was 30. And I remember having, on the day, a few weeks before, I'd had a few heavy nights, and I just thought, I'm really not enjoying this. It's no good. And I thought, I'm just going to take a year off. And I remember having 3 beers on my 29th birthday at a restaurant in Essex, and I had that third beer and just put it down. I went, I'm not having another one for a year. And I'm quite a determined guy. If I say I'm going to do something 9 times out of 10, I will do that thing. So the first year started as a challenge.
Right.
And then it became a choice, because I realised how much I loved waking up in the morning. I realised how much more I preferred it. I realised how much more I loved how productive I would be and the output that I would create from my weeks. So things got better. And then I'm an obsessive learner. So a lot of people may have heard of Alan Carr. He wrote a book, and I believe they're called the Easy Way. So it's the easy way to stop smoking, the easy way to stop drinking from memory. And essentially the process is you associate pain with doing the thing and pleasure with not doing the thing. Mm-hmm. So you associate pain with drinking, but pleasure with not drinking. Now, where a lot of people go wrong when they want to stop drinking or any other choice of thing that they want to stop is they can associate pain with it when they're hungover, let's say, but then they also associate pain with the thing that they enjoy with doing, like the socializing, for example. So then what happens is like, but I don't want to miss out socializing, because otherwise they feel it's pain. So what I believe in is you create pain associated with the thing, drinking, whatever, but then you create the pleasure associated with not doing it. So the quicker you create that, then you've got 2 forces driving you forward to not want to do whatever it is. So to this day, I've never said I'm never drinking again. I've never said I'm teetotal. But yeah, I made that choice. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not one to say everyone must do it. But if you've got something you want to achieve and you feel like it's causing you getting in the way, then you work on it. And like this year, I'm quite happy to admit one of my go-tos when I've had some tough times this year for various reasons, and one of my go-tos now is sugar. So I'll go on sugar. So that's now something that I'm looking at, going, right, well, how do I change that? Your point about wanting to live longer. So 7 years ago, I first came across the idea of life longevity, really started looking into it and thinking, do you know what, this is... When most people hear me say I'm going to live till I'm 150, I think you're absolutely delusional until they start to understand the science. If you start listening to Dr. David Sinclair at a book called Lifespan, you've got Mark Hyman and I think it's Peter Attia, and these people, you realise actually this is well within our
possibility.
Well within the possibility. Yeah, sure, there's some lifestyle changes that have to happen, and things need to change. I think a huge component of it is mindset, and this is where North Star thinking comes into play as well, because in what we call the blue zones around the world, which is where people live to over 100, there's some common themes, but there's a particular blue zone of an island just off Japan called Okinawa, and they have more centurions than anywhere else on the planet. Now, all other things being equal, diet, exercise and everything else, what they have that's different there is they live by a concept called an ikigai. And an ikigai in English translation, we don't have a one-word translation, but it means a reason for being. So they live by this reason for being. And if you imagine a Venn diagram, so it's basically 4 circles that all overlap in the middle, that's what the ikigai is. But there's 4 things. So it's what they love, what they're good at, what the world needs, so what's a problem they're solving, and how they can get paid. So when you have the overlap of all of those things, they just want to keep doing it and they keep working towards that. And that's really, there's 4 ways to create your North Star, and that for me is one of them, is you can answer those questions and you start to see the overlap, and then that gives you a bit of an understanding of what you could do, because then all of a sudden it's no longer I want to retire at 65 or retire at 70. You think of the word, the amount of people that I know, or most people listen to this may know of someone that they've worked their whole life, they get to a point where they've retired, and then in a matter of days or weeks or months, they're depressed, or they even die, because they've now not got any purpose. Whereas if you've got this thing you're going to keep doing, you think of the word retire. I'm going to retire. I'm going to get more tired every day. I'm going to get more retire. Like it just makes no sense. So if you've got this thing that energizes you, it fires you up, it fills you with enthusiasm, every single day you're doing it and you know you're making a bigger and bigger ripple effect, some amazing stuff can happen. And that's really where I think it's one of the components, only one of the components where North Star thinking comes into play. Because most people listening to this are probably going to be business owners, right?
Yeah.
And most people in business, if they've got to a certain size, they've had some degree of business vision, they've got some degree of business mission, and they've got some business values. You know, I think it'd be fair to say that you wouldn't have grown my PA as well as you have over the last 17 years.
Yeah.
If at certain points with the various coaches you've worked with, you didn't have the vision of where we're going, the business mission and the values, you wouldn't have been able to grow to the size you are. Yet you ask the same question to most people: what vision do you have for your life? What life mission do you have? And how clear are you on your personal values? They don't know. And in the same way that you can't grow your business to the levels it's capable of becoming by having a clear business vision, mission and values, then the same applies for life too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's just because people just don't do that, do they? They just one day to the other. And I find it so, like, the focus on the fun stuff thing is all about the North Star. It's the ikigai. It's how do we get to spend every day really being joyful, present, enjoying it. Yeah.
And that's where I believe that when you do life that fulfills you, so take the word fulfillment, feel full mentally. When we feel full mentally, we're fulfilled, we operate better. Why would you want to go out and get blind drunk and feel crap all the next day? So that's why one of the things that for me is that if you are thinking about taking a break, there's some great organisations. A great friend of mine owns 1 Year No Beer, Rory Fairburns, and you can go and do a 28-day challenge, a 90-day challenge, a 365-day challenge if you want to. But one of the best things that you can do, in my opinion, is find a few other people that also don't want to drink. You know, it's so funny. Today I was on the way up on the train and some messages in a WhatsApp group that I started a year ago when I did a No Sugar November, and a few people started posting in the group saying, I'm trying to work out why I don't feel as good as I did this time last year. And then I remembered this year, last year we were doing a No Sugar November as a challenge, because then you've got those people around you that you can share, well, this is what I'm doing instead, or this is what I'm doing. And one of my little tips is, if I know that I was going to be going out and there's a chance I could do something that I could drink, then I put something in place the next morning with somebody else that I don't want to let down. So therefore, if I say, I don't know, I'm going for a walk at sunrise with my friend John, I'll say, no, sorry, I can't do it because I'm doing something tomorrow morning early. So you've given yourself that reason rather than going, oh, well, I might as well because I've got nothing to do tomorrow. Or one of the things I like, and because it tastes really nice as well, is that just drinking water all day or all night isn't very fun. So one of my little things is get a big gin glass, fill it with ice, get a tonic water, big round slice of orange, and it tastes really nice and it looks like you're drinking. Or there's loads of no alcohol or
there is
no alcohol-free beers now. So it's all of those things. But it's definitely something that will enable you to have higher levels of productivity if you want to.
Definitely, like mentally and in your health as well, isn't it? The impact on it. Because one thing I do always, if I think about you and I think on your Instagram, I often see the sunrise or you running really early in the morning. And I do equate that with, like, you must feel fresh all of the time. And so you're up out and
yeah, I mean, there's times stuff when I don't. There's a few things that have come in and I'm an obsessive learner and I'm constantly thinking, what can I do that's going to give me the edge? And energy is one of them, right? So 5 or so years ago, I read a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, completely changed my opinion on sleep. And so now I will look to get 8 hours sleep a night. I do love the sunrise. For me, there's just something about seeing the sunrise, seeing it coming up. You're right, on most days. If I'm ever in other countries or wherever, I will search out 2 things, water and the sunrise, and go and see that. And if I can do both at the same time, even better. And I just think it's a nice way to start the day and see what's going on. And yeah, it makes a big difference. I'm a huge believer, if you win your morning, you win your day.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like. You know, for me, getting some exercise in, doing some meditation, doing affirmations. I read a book called The Daily Stoic each day.
Yes.
It's a 1-page little thing just to start getting the mind thinking. Doing my today's top priorities. These are things that give me the structure to perform in a way that gets me that gets me
like
moving
optimised.
forward. Yeah.
for the day.
And look, I'm the same as everybody else. I have tough times. I have things that don't go well. But I believe that one of the reasons why I can do things in a way when maybe some other people wouldn't, or get more done, is just because of the structure of how stuff is done. And I'm still not perfect. I'm still always learning, and it's it's an interesting
ongoing
thing
journey.
to do. Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
totally. We're coming to the end of our time together. Well, I just do want to mention, I did remember the book this morning. In fact, Joe had to just reverse back to the front door so I could go and get it. North Star Thinking. It is a fantastic book, and I guess for anybody who's listening to this and maybe, they're not in a position to get a coach right now, but they want to do some work on, like, I want to get out of this funk, I want to focus on the fun stuff more. And part of that is them understanding, well, let's dream big. What is my North Star thinking so I can get re-energized? The book is a really fantastic guidebook, I guess, ultimately, isn't it? It's like the first place would you send people to get an understanding? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I attempted to do, how well I've done it, I guess that's down to other people to decide, was that I wanted to create, there's so many books out there, Emma, and I'm sure you've read plenty of them, where they just scratch the surface enough so that you buy their course, or you do their training program or whatever, or it's basically the book is a pitch throughout,
for whatever they're selling.
And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to create a resource that someone could read from cover to cover. They could do the exercises. There's loads of exercises in the book, and the book itself wouldn't just be information, it would create transformation. And that's what I really attempted to do with the book. So it's a great place to start. If you work through the exercise, it is a book that's designed to be worked, not just to be read. And you can get it on Audible and whatever else, but it is designed that if you actually do the questions and you stop and reflect, I believe that any problem is simply an unasked or unanswered question. And there's a whole lot of questions in there to get people thinking. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, no, definitely. My book is well thumbed because I've read it a couple of times now. It is fantastic. I highly recommend it. So Will's book is called North Star Thinking. Will, thank you so much for coming today. I feel like there's been so much about focusing on the fun stuff, and there's been lots of practical implementable business things, but also just that the health perspective of it, because ultimately unhealthy bodies, I don't believe, are going to be focusing on the fun stuff, enjoying the day, and so thank you for bringing that aspect to it. I don't feel like we've covered that in the same way. Like, so far, this has been the first time. Will, thank you so much for coming today. I think it's just been chock full of stuff that people can go, do you know what, actually, I'm going to go and do that, me included. I've got a little list of things. Thank you so much for today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.